welcome back to Narrative Pride. So, last video we discussed gender dysphoria, the bad stuff. We're talking about how shitty it can feel when our gender doesn't align with our sex at birth and that discomfort that we have with the disconnect. Today, thankfully, we are talking about the good stuff, gender euphoria, which is the complete opposite. It is that feeling of ease, that happiness when we actually feel in alignment. We just feel right. It's possibly the best way to describe it. Everything feels right. I feel like there are a couple of different ways that we experience euphoria, and there are some traps to be aware of, particularly if you're online a lot and listen to other people sharing stories and all those sort of things. So we're going to break that down today. So first and foremost, I know particularly for all those people out there who, maybe the egg is just cracked, it's cracking, they're questioning, they're closer to the start of their journey than others. For me, I really doubted this idea of gender euphoria. I'd read about it, I'd heard stories, I was reading a lot, doing a lot of research myself before I started my transition. So of course I'd heard about gender euphoria. But it just seemed so impossible, so unlikely, so hard to conceive to me, who was feeling pretty down at the time, that such simple things sometimes could make people feel so happy and so affirmed. And, some of the ways people describe it is often like this really intense bliss. That to me just seems so unreal. It seems so bizarre, impossible, to be honest. So, when I came out and started my journey, I was doing it to try and ease the bad stuff, and I didn't really expect to feel good or feel good about myself or have these moments where I'm just like, wow. But, we do. So particularly for me, my first big hit of euphoria, and I've written about this on my blog, very quickly after I came out, one of the first things I did was I went to my local Kmart. So anyone in the US will be like, what? Kmart? In Australia, Kmart is huge. It's everywhere. Whereas in the US, for my Australian audiences, Kmart is nowhere. So it's a complete cultural change. But I went to my local Kmart and got some activewear, because this had been one of the things that had been triggering a lot of my dysphoria, was that when I went to the gym, which has always been part of my routine and something that I've loved to do, I was really being triggered by drab male workout gear, workout clothing, male sort of workout culture, and really was quite jealous of women that I saw at the gym wearing their different activewear, looking fabulous. So first thing I wanted to do was look fabulous. So I went to get some activewear. Yes, Kmart, cheap and nasty. I know I wasn't getting anything good, but it was a step. Now, the first time I tried this on, completely at home by myself, oh my god, instantaneously bliss on tap, bottle that shit. It was just so intense that it was this feeling that I'd read about, that I'd heard other trans people talk about, but here it was, I was experiencing it, and I was like, oh, I didn't actually think this was possible, and I was giddy. That's probably the best way to describe how I felt. I felt giddy. It was amazing, and it had this really powerful additional element to it, in that this was the first time I'd had a rough, 5 or 6 days after coming out. It had been intense, very emotional, very hard. Didn't really know where my life was going. But then there was this hit of just sheer bliss that I hadn't thought was possible. So it actually really confirmed my decision to come out and to transition. It confirmed a lot of what I had thought about myself. It really reinforced everything up until that point, but in a positive way rather than, oh, I feel bad, so, and these things are triggering me, and I've spoken about it with a professional, and therefore I've concluded that I'm trans. It was, oh, I've already believe I'm trans, but actually, yes, the fact that this has such an impact to me means that this is the answer. So, particularly those first hits of euphoria can be really intense, really strong, and amazing. In some instances, I'd love to go back there. Some instances, definitely not. But it has this ability to affirm who we are, which is really powerful. Now, there are, of course, a lot of other things that can trigger us, and that it depends on, potentially what our sources of dysphoria were. So, as I said, going to the gym had become quite hard for me, and therefore it sort of made sense that activewear would trigger a good hit of the good stuff. But there are other things that people talk about, whether that's getting their eyebrows done, getting their ears pierced, wearing a dress for the first time, all these first experiences, which obviously can trigger a nice hit of affirming euphoria. But they don't do that for everyone. But, not these things aren't going to trigger and affect people the same way. Some of us get into piercings, some of us don't. Some of us like wearing dresses. Again, some don't. Although having a good spin always makes me flutter a little bit. But, it's about really, experimenting with first times. Trying new things out, trying new clothes, new looks. And sometimes you don't really know what will trigger you. Probably the biggest warning here is that because people talk about certain first-time experiences or certain elements that can trigger a good hit of euphoria, that you sort of expect it. So just try and not necessarily put pressure on every little first-time experience to trigger some big hit. Otherwise, there is this potential that we can get a little bit disappointed. Oh, I was expecting that to really lift me up and have a big moment. But it's also not all about first times and big hits. Realistically, what sustains us the most, and what I find particularly these days, 3 years into my transition, is the most important, are those everyday moments where we look in the mirror and we just go, hey, I like what I see. I like what I'm wearing. And it puts just a little smile on my face and I can go about my business. Puts me in a nice frame of mind. So those continual daily experiences are really important. So it is important to take a moment to, when we're getting ready in the morning, look at ourselves in the mirror, maybe take a selfie, whatever, to try and capture some of those little moments. Go, oh yeah, I'm really happy with how I look today. Now, the third element of euphoria, and this is the part that we cannot really control at all. We like to think that we can, but we can't. And that is how people talk to us, represent things to us, how they see us. And this can be so affirming, so amazing. I'm out in public and it's quite clear that people perceive me as a woman and are treating me that way. Unfortunately, sometimes being treated as a woman means that you get really sexist comments. Now, the bizarre thing about trans women is that, like, sometimes we'll be like, oh, that guy's being really sexist, he's yelling out obscenities, he's talking about my ass, whatever. He's like, what a sexist pig. But, yay, that felt really good. It's bizarre. Part of us are like, this guy is so sexist, this is what is wrong with the world, bloody misogynists. But knowing, as we do, that unfortunately that is the way that a lot of women get treated in our culture that we live in, particularly now, that being treated that way means that, you know, that they actually perceive us as who we are and see who we are. And they just have this really sick and toxic way of representing that. So it's okay to get a little bit of euphoria out of that, because it is a mark that we have come a long way, that we are being seen and treated as women. You know, I know for some of the trans men out there, getting into those really blokey chats, even if they're not interested in the blokey things, it can be quite affirming, because it's, again, people making assumptions based on the perception of your gender. You know, possibly a bit awkward when some of that misogynistic chat comes up. Again, you know, oh, check her out. Sort of nonsense. But I'm sure for some of the guys out there, it is quite affirming in terms of feeling like they're part of the group and they're seen as just another one of the guys. One thing to do with that I had to get comfortable with is women will compliment women. And they don't necessarily mean anything by it. They're not necessarily into you. But they will compliment what you're wearing. Oh, your earrings. Oh, I love that nail colour. You know, where did you get that? That looks good on you. Which, like, every time it's like, yes, I'm winning. You like the dress that I picked out. The trans woman, you're used to not complimenting others or being complimented. So when it does happen, you're like, oh, that was weird. Is she just being nice, or is she into me, or has she realised that I'm trans and is just trying to be supportive? Like, what does this mean? It fucking doesn't mean anything. It means that you're wearing a nice dress and she likes it and potentially wants to buy the same thing. It's just a woman thing. So some of those euphoria moments are also really steep learning curves. But perhaps the biggest ones there are when we are treated for who we are, because we do feel really affirmed, and we can feel that all the different elements that we're working on, that we're trying to express in ourselves, are coming together. And they are perhaps the most meaningful moments. Thankfully, we have euphoria, because sometimes we just need something to pull us out of the crap. Whether that is political crap, whether that is dysphoria. We need to have those little wins, those little moments where we feel good about ourselves and just get to smile. You know, things that on an everyday basis really make me smile are, you know, doing my makeup, getting ready for work. The getting ready process, trust me, I don't enjoy it. The finished product though, like, hey, most of the time I look in the mirror, hey, yeah, I look all right, I'm happy with myself. Yeah. You know, something that I find quite affirming and always makes me smile is actually wearing a tight top, because it particularly hugs my shape. You know, like, I don't have an amazing figure by any stretch, but wearing a tight top, it does show the progress in certain growth, and I'm like, oh, I feel like I look more feminine because you can notice that I have boobs, even though they're small, because I'm wearing a tight top. So yes, that feels good. Obviously, wearing a nice new dress, getting dolled up, always sets me off. As I said before, getting my eyebrows done. You know, moments that really make me feel good. That's going to be different for everyone though. So, any baby trans people out there watching, go out there, experience things, and find what makes you happy. Because when it does, it makes you pretty damn happy. And at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. We're going through all this to just have those moments to be ourselves and find some euphoria. So, go out and do it, and join me for the next episode by remembering to like and subscribe.